Hey folks, I'm David. I'm a principal engineer. I currently work for Microsoft focused on IoT and machine learning. For those of y'all who don't know what that really means, it means I'm one of the highest level engineers that you can get to, and I focus on some of the most challenging workloads. I also work with some of the more complicated customers, some of the really big ones. Uh, Today, what are we going to talk about? It's been a while since I've done web development and UI in particular. You know, focusing on IoT and machine learning, it means I've been spending a lot of time in embedded systems and just large-scale back-end systems, a lot of data streaming. And I haven't really taken a look at web dev since 2015 or so. So I figured it'd be a good time to take a look at web development again and just start trying to update some of my skills there. Really important to be able to do that and just broaden the technical base. There's some big benefits around this. You're going to find new features and scenarios when you broaden your technical base. So for me, that gap is really in just classic web dev and UI stuff. So I already had a couple ideas around some new things after doing a couple weeks in this. Things like iPhone apps for low touch provisioning for embedded devices, right? Like you take it on site, you got to do something that's a per site configuration. Man, knowing how to do iPhone development, everybody's got one of these things, man. You know, like this one of the most powerful computers around, so you should really know how to do that, and I don't know how to do that, so we're going to work towards that. There's other things like a basic web app for device administration, being able to reuse that. Other really nice things are that you can package these things up. So kind of after the past couple weeks, I was seeing that modern UI design has become very componentized and pluggable. So that means that when you build something, you can package that up into a nice thing and integrate it into other systems really effectively. I've also been trying to just build stuff with what's out there. You know, the first couple weeks are don't try to build too much new, just try to see what's out there. And there's a lot of broken stuff out there. So I'm gonna have my hands busy, it looks like, trying to fix a few things like Azure Maps, React.js component. You know, I was following one the GitHub tutorial and you know, I just couldn't quite get that to work the way it seemed to think that it should work. So we'll go around through what I've been working on over the past couple weeks, give you the perspective of somebody who's been in software for a long time. I've been at Microsoft 11 years as of yesterday, so and then before that I've been in software even longer before that, so you know, it's good to get that kind of view. So a lot of the things that you see online, they're very beginner oriented, and a lot of YouTube videos you find are very beginner oriented. So we're going to try and step that up a little bit and see, all right, we got to really try and figure out how to use this stuff for real and big applications and solutions where things matter and stuff's on the line. So that's kind of what we're going to do. So let's kind of begin. The best way to actually go about learning things, I figured out, is to just go ahead and actually do something and build a project. So we built a simple project. I mean, it's super simple. We're really trying to focus on the web development, the UI development, and not overcomplicate things with other considerations that we tend to focus on. So it's a very simple client-server solution so that we can focus on that side of the house. I've been building this for about 3 weeks. It's been a bit of an experience because before this I was doing a lot of Python, and this is, you know, technologies I hadn't used in a while, so it takes a little while to get up and running with that. So we'll start. First things first, hosting provider. So let's actually go ahead and share my screen here so we can take a look at what we've got. We are using Azure. This is a really cool hosting provider. Obviously, I work for Microsoft, so my familiarity is here. But you've got just about everything in this. So if you're unfamiliar with it, you want to be able to go and deploy stuff. I mean, you got everything. You want to deploy a virtual machine, you got virtual machines. You want Kubernetes, click a button, you got Kubernetes. You want a globally scalable, multimodal database with master for writes in multiple geographies and a dynamic consistency model. Dude, it's click a button and go. Like this is super powerful. I use this all the time for every project, and man, you can build some really sophisticated, scalable solutions with this. So went ahead and used this. And the main thing we're going to use it for is going to be our SQL Server for our persistence layer and our web application hosting. So I haven't gone ahead and deployed the web application, but we do have a SQL Server here. I did switch to Mac last week. No, this week. It was this week. This week was my first week using a Mac, and it turns out that local DB isn't supported on Mac, so we had to go ahead and pick a SQL Server for remote usage. So we actually have one of those inside of here. We're not going to focus on the Azure side of it. We'll do that later. But I've got a database here, and we went ahead with SQL Server. So let's talk about that. I've broken this whole thing into a couple of main pieces of the puzzle. Right? I just said it's a client server architecture, but it's you got a few more things to it than that, right? So you have to have your hosting provider. You have to have your persistence layer. You have to have your API layer. You got to have I've got a web application, so we've got our web UI layer, and eventually I'll have a phone application layer as well. So what is it? You got your provider, persistence, API, web UI, and phone. So we get about 5 things that we're really working on here, and you got choices at every one of these places. So for me personally, I got to pick something to focus on and learn and use that's going to last a while and be usable across a bunch of projects. So I do customer engineering at Microsoft, and you really you got to find something that can support a broad base of customers, but also be able to go from like small startup all the way to giant enterprise and everything in between. So like we'll see regular customers, we'll see Department of Defense customers, we'll see government customers, we'll see customers with almost no budget, we'll see customers with massive budget. So what do you pick to do that so that you can support that broad base of customers? And I ended up going for SQL Server. It does a really good job across the board. You could start with a free deployment. I think you only get about 5 gig on Azure for a unpaid subscription. I work for Microsoft, so I get whatever I want. So here we've got a SQL Server. I picked a Gen 5 too. This is a little bit more of an expensive one, but it's got a lot of capability built into that particular one. Other things that are cool is like if I decide I want to do a video on this later and do multi-tenancy, and I'm going to do a SQL Server per customer because my customers want data isolation, I can deploy something like an Elastic Pool, which is kind of highlighted right here. You should be able to see that. My mouse is going over it. That'll allow us to load balance across multiple customers and be able to essentially pay less because they should ideally have different load patterns. Totally different video. I got a really great colleague we might interview later who can talk in super depth about that. But at the end of the day, it was SQL Server. The other big reason for going with a SQL Server is the schematic aspect of it. I've been programming with Python and MongoDB, and I've been supporting a production application built on top of that for 5 years. I think 5 years I had that, and that is a royal pain. Like I can't stand NoSQL anymore. You want to talk non-schematic to me? I don't want to hear it anymore. It's the worst decision you can make. I know that's going to get a lot of fire on the internet. Nobody watches this, so it's not like it's going to get a whole lot yet. But you just, if you're doing NoSQL, yeah, it makes versioning and adding things easy, but it incurs a lot of bad habits that tend to hurt you long term. So, like when I was first building that solution on a NoSQL based backend MongoDB, it was easy to get up and running at the beginning, like super fast. We could dynamically change stuff. But then when it got to be a bigger project and we'd owned it for a couple of years, it got to be very problematic because when you made upgrades, like you could change things that would break other things in other areas of the system. So when you first start, your system's small, but then you're going to add a piece over here, and you're going to add a piece over there, and you're going to add a piece over here, and having this loosey-goosey, like non-schematic setup, especially at a core layer like persistence, that caused nightmares, and it tripled our unit testing code base, and we were literally like unit testing CRUD capabilities and making sure it matched to our data models. It was bad. So I decided that for future skills, like if I'm going to upgrade my technology base, I wanted to go more with a SQL Server, and it supports all those customers, and also it's schematic. So that was a big thing. Let's go ahead and show something else that's pretty cool in here. So we'll pick, so I have one server, I pay for the SKU of the server, I can have a couple databases. We have a database here. They took away, or they didn't take away, it just never worked, SQL Server Management Studio for Mac. If I've got a request I'm gonna have to put out, it's gonna be to get one of those. But there is a query editor, which is pretty cool. So we'll go ahead and enter my password. So this is going to allow like Mac people to be able to interact with your SQL Server a little bit better. The Windows people, you get SQL Server Management Studio. That thing's awesome. I haven't really explored this too much, but at a minimum, I can run queries and do some stuff with it. So. All right, so we've got some stuff in here. I've got 3 tables, facility, rating, user. We'll talk a little bit more about what the application does and is for. And you can see that I actually have this stored in the database, and we'll go through the backend layer now. That wraps up persistence layer, SQL Server. Feeling pretty good about that switch from MongoDB for kind of modernizing my skill set. And modernizing sounds silly because SQL Server is older than MongoDB, but one of my colleagues put a funny meme that says, you're going to start with SQL Server and then you're going to switch to the cool kid stuff, and then you're going to realize you're coming back to SQL Server, and he's totally right. Very good solution there. Next up, we're going to do, what did I pick for the backend for this app? We went for C#, .NET Core 6. For interacting with the persistence layer, we're using Entity Framework Core, works with .NET Core. Why are we doing that? Well, .NET Core is going to run on Windows and Linux, so that's really nice. It works on a Mac. I can run this on Mac. I debug directly from a Mac. I'm not running like a virtualization or anything like that. It runs. That's part of why they came out with .NET Core. And C#, why did I switch to C# versus Python? It really gets back to having a more robust language with more built-in capability. Like in Python, I was doing such stuff. Just like you can just, hey, I've got an object here, and I'm just gonna append a function to it, or I'm gonna append a value, and like this concept of immutability was just gone. And static typing and checking was gone. So like when I was operating that solution, half of the bugs that we ran into in production were a result of non-static typing, and they were hard to find because like it was a data processing app. Of course, we built data processing in Python, and turns out that it's 1 in a million records that goes bad and crashes the whole system. So .NET kind of forces you to put things into a format, and you have to process it into that class. You can't just like do all this loosey-goosey stuff that like JavaScript and Python let you do. So I've taken a big liking to this from a long-term supportability perspective. I think it's going to be basically cost up front is a little bit higher to build it because it takes more time, there's more plumbing, there's more setup. But once it's running, like my confidence in it running and staying running is really high. And now I'm unit testing useful things and not unit testing useless things. Like I'd have to unit test to make sure that the data model was correct. That's garbage. Like why did I have to do that? So really liking this for my back end. Let's talk about this a little bit because it's been a while since I've done some .NET, and it's been a while since I've done ASP.NET. So this is an ASP.NET application. It's actually running right now. I can run breakpoints. It's running a little web app. See here, I believe it's in Safari, this one. So, you know, this is just the out-of-box UI that comes with it, but more importantly, it has an API behind it. So if I do /API/ oops, it's localhost, what port was I on? Let's just hit a refresh, 7113. So /API/facilities, this is going to be a get call, and it's just going to get me all the facilities. So this is what we're really after. The magic here is that I can host these data-driven services that my user interfaces can interact with. So I can build a web interface, and that web interface can be in a completely different hosting ecosystem. It can be in a different set of languages separately from my backend. That's one of the nice things. We'll talk about setting that up so that you can support that. And I can also have a phone application that hits the same APIs. We'll get further advanced, like how do you wrap it up, how do you sell it, and all that kind of stuff. But for now, we're just going simple. So let's talk about that for a second here. So Visual Studio, this is Visual Studio proper for Mac. Wow, how cool is that? I was very surprised when I switched to Mac how nice this has been. A lot of the tools that didn't exist now exist, and it's been quite lovely. So I think some of the hardest things to get back into this was that when they modernized to .NET Core 6 and ASP.NET Core 6, they made things simpler, and that was a brain barrier to get over for me. So like dependency injection was simpler, using endpoints is simpler, just this whole configuration setup. So you'll see I'm in this program.cs. This is where a lot of things get added and configured. So all your stuff gets configured in here. So first things first, to allow for different user interfaces to interact with my backend, we needed to basically remove our cross-origin request policies. So we're allowing any origin, any method, and any header. You'll notice that at some point it warns you and says this is ridiculously insecure, you can't possibly do this. But like if you're going to host a backend API, that you need to do something along these lines. What's really dangerous about this from a security perspective really is that I'm opening it up to the world via any origin and any method and any header. Like theoretically, I should know who's coming in. But if I want to make a broadly usable API that anybody can use, and it's not just me, then I'll probably do this because the intent is for everybody to use it. My security model is going to change. I think next week or the week after we'll focus on adding that. But again, we're starting simple here. Just get it up and running, get the modern tools going, and get your baseline up. And then you can kind of come back in and refine things. The other interesting thing is this. This is that dependency injection. So we went ahead and did a repository model or a service model. It's a design pattern basically where you can inject the actual implementation for your backend integrations. So we've got an iFacility which defines the methods that I need to interact with my backend, and I have a facility repository which actually implements this. this is one of the things that I'm talking about, like why you would do .NET over Python, is that this type of thing is very, very valuable long term, and it's hard to do in Python. So what you end up doing is you just don't do it, and it causes pain later. So we had to switch things like data providers. So when you switch data providers, like if you go directly to the repository, you're gonna end up, if you switch or a change happens, or a V1 to a V2, a lot of things are gonna depend on that, and it's not easy to switch it. It's very hard to switch it. So having these type of patterns in .NET as like baked in, everybody knows it kind of stuff, and this is familiar for everybody and all your engineers, is a baseline set of expectation, and makes it so that you can have a code base that lasts longer. Let's take a look. I have a facility repository. I mean, it's simple. It's just get all of the facilities. I'm going to get a paginated list of facilities. I'm going to get one by its ID. I'm going to insert one. I'm going to update one. I'm going to delete one, but I'm going to use like a facility object, and then I can also delete one simply by its ID. So basic, create, read, update, delete stuff. And you use this, and when you use it in pieces of your code, so you'll see if we go to like our facilities controller, we're using an iFacility repository, and this thing is get by ID, get all async. But what happens is that when we configure in our program.cs, we're injecting this implementation right here. I could swap this for, you'll see that this is repositories.sql. We're using repositories.sql. Maybe I had a Mongo one. Maybe I changed my mind. SQL was terrible. I hate SQL now. I want to use Mongo. I'm going to do Mongo. Or I'm supporting multiple customers, and one customer has all their other stuff in a database I never heard of. It's Bob's database. And we got to use Bob's database. I'm going to make facility repository.bob. I'm going to inject it right here, and I'm going to do a deployment just for that customer, and it's going to redirect everything there, and I'll reroute all of that customer stuff via headers to this particular backend, and that'll then fan out to the appropriate location. That is why we do this, because when you get to futures and you got to maintain something for longer than a year, and you get past your startup phase, if you didn't do this, you're going to be crying later when you get that big customer who has that particular demand on you. You got to do this everywhere, man. Like this is super important. So from a modernization, I did a fair amount. I was a game developer years ago, so this wasn't too bad to get back into since there was a bit of a background here. Visual Studio proper works really nicely in this. There are some things that are also nice. You'll see app settings. We've got we've already configured a lot of our connection strings into this app setting. So when we do a deployment to Azure, we can overwrite these in the connection strings area and get encrypted connection strings. So definitely you want to put all this stuff in here. Let's see here, what else? We talked about why not Python Node. I wanted to say that static typing situation in .NET really solved about 80% of my runtime bugs, is going to be my assessment. I think it's, based on running my old code base, about 80% of the bugs are probably related to runtime stuff that could have just been solved via static typing. Are there downsides? Yeah, the upfront costs and the coding and piping, but maintenance is forever, so development is once. All right, so that's kind of where we're at here. This works kind of nice. If anyone's got questions, feel free to share those questions. We'll move on to the web UI layer. This is where a lot of the time I've been spending is, because this is where a lot of the modernization has happened for me. I had to go through a lot of decisions here. Originally, the last time I had done this, Knockout.js was the cool thing. Angular was the cool thing. So I was using Angular version 1 with Knockout.js, and it was insanely slow. And I had moved forward with another code base. We took out the Angular piece and just used Knockout. Speed went a lot better. The data binding was nice, but modularity, componentization was challenging. So when looking to upgrade my web UI development, really the big contenders looked like they were AngularJS still, like version 8. So they've modernized a lot since I had last looked at them, and React.js. The big thing, I ended up going for React.js as opposed to Angular. And I think the biggest reason for that ended up boiling down to its componentization, and it's smaller in the amount of things that it's attempting to do, which makes it a little bit more flexible, I felt like. To be fair, I didn't do a super deep dive, like I didn't actually build anything with Angular 8, but it looked a lot like Angular 1, just with some lifestyle changes that made it a little nicer. And there's a reason I went for Knockout. Like, you know, you see all this stuff and it gets overly complicated and overly architected, and UIs are, they're complicated, but you don't have to be that complicated. So we went for React. The inheritance, componentization, inject this piece into that was super nice. So if I want to build things and have it reused across more than one project, this was looking really good for that, because each one, according to React's main model, is that it should be independently usable or within a small package of itself. So there were some main downsides to React. Let's see if let's actually cancel our npm real quick. Npm audit, I believe, was our command. This is just this, and this isn't React specific. This is like Node, JavaScript, Angular, and everybody else in the world specific. I want to highlight a few things that really concern me here. The first of which is that I'm doing a pretty basic project, and I already have 6 high severity vulnerabilities inside of this project. I managed to knock this down. Originally I had 14, and that was just from following Hello World. Like I installed it, I installed the stuff for the JSX, and all of a sudden I've got 6 high severity vulnerabilities off of Hello World. Like, I don't even know what these do. So I went and I found that there have been a lot of hacks around the sheer quantity of dependencies. So it's an indirect dependency attack that folks can execute when using a lot of these open source libraries. It's true in Python. It's true in anything where you basically have a lot of dependencies, and it's especially more dangerous in open source because folks just kind of tend to take dependencies on this, that, and the other. Like, a great example is left tab. I mean, who really needed to take a dependency on something that adds 4 spaces? Like, dude, you couldn't code that in 2 lines yourself? Like, why did you do that? And then the guy goes and he tears it down and shuts down half the freaking internet. Like, shame on you. So this has been highly concerning. I've got to sort out a way to do that. So if anybody who's been coding in React and some of this open source knows how to deal with knocking down the dependencies, I think I'm up to 1,900 dependencies. When I inspect the number of files in that folder, it's like 35,000 files. That's a lot. I got to audit all that. So if you're looking to do this for a real production system, like there's going to be a lot of hurdles to go through, because like you have a lot of vulnerability just from the aspect of doing that. If you took a dependency on something dumb, then like, yeah, the random code attacks. I mean, they could possibly even be random code attacking my machine. npm start. What the heck does React start do? Have I inspected the code? What did they take dependencies on to do this? They took, it's one package. There's 1,900 and something other dependencies that got taken. The heck are those? So that's super concerning. And just folks are just coding along with it. And, you know, I'm going to code along with it for now as well. But as far as like using this for real production stuff, it's going to be a heck of an audit day. Actual UI components. Previously, let's go through React real quick and just show a little bit of that, because this is kind of neat. The first things here are, I've got an index.html. This is it in my index.html. It just has a div, ID, root, and a title. That's it, nothing else. So I got an index.js, and this just has a side nav. Let's take a look at the actual interface here. So here we go. So I have a navigation. It's, you know, it's got this cool like, hey, minimum bar situation with some logos, some buttons. I can click that and make it so I can see what it is, but I keep this nice big view. And I can hit my, that's right, I hit npm stop. Let's head over to my, code, terminal, npm start. We get a tangent on security. We do a lot of security in IoT, like most of the cyber threats that they've been reporting are IoT-based cyber threats. So in manufacturing critical systems, security is number one. So I'll go on that all day. So we'll do an npm start. It'll kick up our web server. There we go. So all right, we'll hit our facilities and check it out. We've got this cool, nice user interface. We can get some modals. How cool is that? You know, so it's nice. Talk about some of the pros and cons to this as an interface development environment. Here's what I've been liking. Forget the security for now. We'll have to figure out how to solve that. Anybody solve that? That'd be great. You know, shoot me messages. What's been really nice is this. So I got this index, right? And I've just injected this component here, right? Like just HTML-ish. So I've got root.render and side nav. I built side nav, by the way, but look at this syntax for this. And its content, I passed it another thing, a router. So let's take a look at our side nav. So I've organized this. I've got navigation. So this is kind of where I was going with. I don't know if this is quite right, but I've got my components. Anything that deals with the facilities going there. I'll do the same thing with users. Anything associated navigation will be here. Anything that's a top level page will go here. So index is a top level page though. It's kind of out there though. We're taking a look at our side nav, and it's a pretty big, complicated monster, but it's a lot of material UI. What's been interesting is that I can add the something else to render. So this does a lot of our navigation. It's a you get a lot of extra stuff to do the like in and out and icons and things like that. But I've got an app bar. Oh, I've got the title bar in here too. So that app bar. And the big thing here is that our actual routes. Where did we stick it? List, content, home. There's our display. Here, href /home. These are important. So /home / whatever. So /facilities. We're going to go to href /facilities. Now we injected a router. So if we do find, I believe we call that content. What did we call that? Index.js. Content, yes. So we're going to render our content. We got a lot of content in here. Here we go. So at the end inside of this box, we're doing our properties content. So this is just going to inject whatever that was passed to us right here. And that's how we get, buttons are different. So that's how we're getting all this in here. So this is our facilities page. We go home, this is the home page. We don't have users, so it actually has a route for, whoops, not found. So that's kind of cool. Going back here, so we're literally injecting our 404 page. So, this same content, our home page this same content via this router. So this router basically says if the URL path is just your URL slash, give us the home page. If it's slash home, give us the home page still. If it's slash facilities, give us this. Now this is a little tricky. If you have something like a drop-down selector, then you'll need to ditch the element it's going to render here, but then add just like this. So you'll see path facilities without the element, and then for which of these it's going to do. So if they select slash view, so slash facility slash view, it'll do facility view, slash facility slash create slash facility slash detail slash ID number. It'll go to the facilities details page and pass an ID number with it. Anything else goes to not found. Super cool. So see, you get, let's like inject this, inject that, inject this. So that's where, like, when you want to step up and hey, you work on back-end systems or IoT systems or machine learning systems, and you want to find a way where you can easily put this stuff in, you should be thinking about what kind of component can I make. That's been a big discovery here. And we'll see, like facilities, I could wrap all these up together and npm distribute it via the package manager. So let's take a look here at our facilities view. So, I mean, again, facilities view, that really fairly sophisticated looking UI. Let's look at this again. This sophisticated UI, I have a modal with a pop-up, I have a table, and I have another pop-up here. And not only that, let's just go ahead and add one, showcase broadcast. I'll go ahead and submit on this. And then we'll refresh our page because it didn't add auto. Look, showcase broadcast is added right here. So you got whole data interaction with it too. That's really neat. So you get a sophisticated page like that, but look at our code. Our code is a single tag passing a URL and a single tag passing a URL. How do you do that? Well, it's because we made this a little bit more fancy. So our modal, we go into our modal, and this is a full, modal, and it's got a button, a dialog, but you know what else is interesting? Is that we have a facility form here. This facility form has been generalized to be able to be usable for edit and for create. So this is where you're like, aha, that's my root component that can be used for more than one thing. So this form, and this row can be used in a lot of other areas. And if I need to make another page that interacts with facilities, and I need a modal to create something or a modal to edit something, it's right there. It's here already. And I can just use that component and put it in other places in my app. And a lot of this old school stuff, I mean, you were just basically copy, paste, pray that when you updated one of them, that you updated all 30 of them. This is, stick it in one place, don't modify it. And the more that you can extract capabilities, the better off you're going to be, because maintenance is going to get easier and easier and easier. All right, that's enough on the React. For the UI side of the house, I had gone Bootstrap initially. I looked at Bootstrap. Bootstrap looked good. I was going to go Bootstrap again. And then I realized that this Material UI seemed to be really well integrated, and it had a lot of nice components that looked a little bit better. And it also had a lot of templates that were a little bit more sophisticated. As far as templates go, I didn't use one. I need to learn how to do this without templates. Like there's licensing problems. Like if you work for a big company like I do, and you build a component, you want to use a component, you want to distribute the component, and you need to worry about licensing at that point. So you're going to have to go through this whole legal audit situation again. So the fewer dependencies you can take, the better off in life you're going to be when you go to finally trying to distribute, publish, whatever it is of that. Um, so we didn't do Bootstrap mostly because Material UI seemed to have better integration, better samples, more interactive kind of stuff, more flexibility, and it was pretty easy to learn to use. It's very similar to Bootstrap, so if you've used Bootstrap before, it looked very similar, but it seemed like a better base if I'm going to go through this whole modernization exercise on my skill set. And then the templates, wonderful templates. Man, there were some really cool templates. So if you don't have some of those big company requirements, take a look at templates. It's just, I don't want to go through that headache. That's really what turned me away from templates. Also, when you buy templates, like, that doesn't mean that they built the template good. Like, when you gotta maintain that code base, like, they may not have separated everything so nice. Like, I bought a template for that previous project. It was like a little startup that I was doing, and it just, like, they built it in a way that forced me to construct the app in a hard to maintain fashion. So the templates look really, really cool, but they could lead you down a path that has you spending more later because you're saving up front. A lot of times what I'm starting to find is that if you're cutting your corners up front, you're going to spend those further down the line, and that's not necessarily a good thing either. So Material UI, if we get down to it, it's got a lot of these cool like buttons and stuff and these icons. If we take a look at our package.json, you know, it's this stuff that's /MUI. It turns out, I found, this was actually a hard thing to learn about, was that there's a at material -UI / whatever stuff you're bringing in, and there's also an at MUI / whatever stuff. And MUI like MUI, I guess I'm calling it MUI. This is the recent one, you know, post version 5.8. This became important because my styles were getting in conflict. So I had to go through and clean out all of my old, you know, I had put both in because I didn't know what I was doing. And I had to go and clean all that out, and I'm still facing some of the repercussions because I don't think everything got removed that should have gotten removed. Other big learning thing, I guess, is the, let's see if we have an example of this. Yes. This class clock extends React component. This is going to bite you later. Don't build like this. The React.js tutorials are still in this format where they're telling you to build these classes. It was a horrible idea because modern React is switching a lot over to hooks for interacting component to component, and you can't put hooks in this. So you do like the first two, and it's like, here's the functional version of how to do this, and then you start going through some of the more advanced things that you need to do, and you can't do it anymore. So, like, I started by building all of my components like this with the extend React component as a class, so I could self-contain it, and then it just bit me later. So that was a horrible idea. So that's all we got for today. So just to kind of wrap back up, I've been working on revamping my web dev skills. Folks got anything they want to see more, I'm going to be working on this over the next couple months probably. It was about 3 weeks worth of work going into building this up. It's open source on GitHub. I'll look for a link. And there's a lot of benefit to building out your skill base and upgrading your skills as well. So, even though I'm a principal engineer at a very large company, I'm still upgrading my skills. And you got to be honest with yourself. Like, my skills suck in that area. It's time to go upgrade them. So, do that circle back. Go back, upgrade it, and you'll be better for it. And I'm going to be better for it. And so that's good stuff. All right. Hope y'all enjoy, and we'll see you next Friday.